What is the true price of looking away? For one man, the cost was a peace he'd never find, a silent regret that shadowed his days. But on this night, he decided to pay a different price. The Cornerstone Grill wasn't a place for drama. It was a haven of Formica tables and endless coffee, bathed in the warm, greasy scent of frying onions and the low murmur of Maple Hollow's evening gossip. The sunset bled orange and purple through the front windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. For a fleeting moment, the world felt stable. Then, the shouting started. It wasn't a sudden explosion, but a rapid, ugly escalation from the back booth. A woman's voice, thin and trembling, trying to placate. A man's voice, a low, menacing growl. A chair scraped violently against the linoleum, a sound like a scream. The diner's comforting hum died instantly. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Conversations evaporated. In the center of the sudden, suffocating silence, a man's hand, thick and possessive, clamped around a woman's forearm. Her wince was a small, sharp intake of breath. At the counter sat Liam Corso. At 36, Liam looked like he was carved from the same solid, weary material as the town itself. A single father, his hands were a roadmap of his life as an auto mechanic, calloused, stained, and strong. Beside him, his 7-year-old daughter, Maya, was lost in her own world, a box of crayons and a drawing of a castle with 3 suns. She hummed a small, tuneless song, oblivious to the poison seeping into the room. But Liam saw it. He always saw it. His life was a gallery of moments he'd failed to act, a collection of ghosts that whispered to him in the quiet hours. The what-ifs were a weight he carried alongside his toolkit. He'd seen this exact brand of casual cruelty before, and the bitter taste of walking away was something he swore he'd never swallow again. This time, he stood. His stool scraped, a sound that cut through the tension. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't puff out his chest. He simply moved, crossing the diner floor with a deliberate, unhurried pace. He placed himself between the man and the woman, a solid, unmovable object. "Take your hand off her," Liam said. His voice was quiet, but it carried the flat, non-negotiable authority of a mechanic tightening a bolt. "Now." The man, surprised by the intervention, sneered. "Mind your own business, pal." His eyes were bloodshot, his breath sour. "This just became my business," Liam replied, his gaze locked, unblinking. He didn't look at the woman. He didn't look at the crowd. He just looked at the man's hand. The man's hand twitched, his shoulder tensing as if to swing. But there was something in Liam's stillness, a complete lack of fear, that acted as a sudden, cold douse of water. It wasn't a threat of violence. It was the promise of a consequence. The manager, finally snapping out of his paralysis, fumbled for the phone, shouting something about the police. That was all it took. With a final venomous curse, the man shoved the table, rattling the salt shakers, and stormed out. The diner's bell jingled violently, and then he was gone, swallowed by the twilight. The room exhaled. The woman, however, seemed to deflate. She stood frozen, mascara painting black rivers down her cheeks, clutching her designer purse as if it were a life raft. Liam turned to her, the hardness in his eyes dissolving. He grabbed a handful of napkins from a dispenser and gently, almost awkwardly, held them out. "You all right?" he asked. She couldn't form words, just managed a faint, jerky nod, her entire body shaking. From the counter, Maya had finally looked up, her crayon poised, her eyes wide with worry. Liam gave her a small, tight smile that said, "It's okay, I'm handling it." He didn't ask the woman's name. He didn't ask what happened. He simply motioned to the empty booth across from his. "Sit down," he said, more of a gentle invitation than a command. He flagged down the waitress, 2 coffees, and a hot chocolate for my daughter. He offered the simple, profound gift of safety, the quiet sanctuary of not having to explain. The woman, who eventually introduced herself as Alara Vance, remained at the diner long after the adrenaline had faded. She sat cradling the heavy ceramic mug, her knuckles white. She said little about the incident, just fragmented phrases. "Thought I could trust him. Went wrong so fast." Liam didn't pry. He understood that some wounds needed air, not pressure. Instead, he filled the silence with the mundane and the hopeful. He talked about the ancient, stubborn oak tree in his backyard and how Maya was designing a treehouse that defied several laws of physics. He spoke of the garage, how business was slow, how the new diagnostic tools cost a fortune, but how you just had to keep your head down and do good work. He spoke of the simple act of showing up, even when life seemed determined to knock you down. Gradually, the trembling in Alara's hands subsided. A flicker of a genuine, if weak, smile touched her lips. She thanked him, her voice thick. I need to. I should send you something for your kindness. Liam just shook his head, a wry smile of his own. You don't owe me anything. Just be safe. When she finally gathered the strength to leave, she walked past their counter stools. She paused, looking at Maya's finished drawing of the castle. She then looked at Liam and back to his daughter. You have a very brave father, she whispered, her voice still fragile. Liam watched her go, like a woman who seemed profoundly out of place in his world. He paid his bill, took Maya's hand, and walked out into the cool night air. He figured that was the end of it. A single, strange ripple in the predictable flow of his life. But life and Alara Vance had a way of defying expectations. 3 days later, the morning sun was struggling to cut through the early fog of Maple Hollow. Liam was on his small front porch, wrestling with the broken zipper on Maya's backpack, when a car turned onto his street. It wasn't a car, it was a statement. A long black sedan, a panther of polished obsidian, it glided to a stop in front of his house. It didn't belong on this street of cracked sidewalks and weary lawns. Its flawless finish reflected the entire slightly dilapidated block, a mirror of wealth and jarring distance. Maya's eyes went wide. Daddy, who's that? She whispered, peering from behind the screen door. A man emerged from the driver's side. Why? He was tall, impeccably tailored in a dark suit, complete with black leather gloves and a chauffeur's cap. He moved with a quiet, practiced efficiency that made Liam instantly uneasy. He walked up the path, his polished shoes clicking, his expression neutral. Mr. Liam Corso? His voice was formal, crisp, and held no trace of their small town's accent. Liam stood up, wiping his greasy hands on a rag. That's me. Can I help you? I was asked to find you by Ms. Vance, the man said. Liam's brow furrowed. Alara, is she okay? Miss Vance is quite well, the man replied. He extended a hand, holding a thick cream-colored envelope sealed with wax. She insisted I deliver this to you personally. Liam took the envelope. It was heavy, the cardstock impossibly expensive. He broke the seal. Inside, a single-page note was written in elegant, flowing script. Mr. Corso, I owe you more than a simple thank you. You offered protection when I was powerless, and you asked for nothing in return. You reminded me that true strength isn't about power, it's about courage. You didn't just step in that night, you restored a piece of my faith in people. Please do not misunderstand this. It is not a gift, it is not charity, it is a promise kept. It is an investment in the kind of character the world desperately needs more of. With deepest gratitude, Alara Vance. Beneath the note was a check, a cashier's check. Liam's heart didn't just stop, it felt like it fell. He stared at the number, his vision blurring. $50,000. $50,000. It was a number so large it felt fictional. It was the end of his debt. It was new tires for his truck. It was a new roof. It was college for Maya. It was everything. His stomach twisted. It was a suffocating mix of disbelief, humiliation, and a desperate, high-clawing hope. He folded the check and held it back out to the driver. I can't take this, he said, his voice thick. Tell her thank you, but I can't. The driver smiled faintly, a small knowing expression. She expected you to say that, sir. He did not take the check. She also instructed me to tell you that it is, unfortunately, a non-negotiable gesture. The funds were transferred to your garage's business account an hour ago. The check is merely a courtesy. The man tipped his hat. She said to tell you, consider it an investment in good work, Mr. Corso. Have a pleasant day. And just like that, the man was back in the obsidian car. It pulled away from the curb as silently as it had arrived, leaving Liam standing on his porch, the check in his hand, and Maya peeking out, her eyes wide with a million questions he had no idea how to answer. What would you do with $50,000? Liam's life will never be the same, all because he chose to stand up. If you're enjoying this story and want to see what happens next, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Apex Tales. Your support helps us tell more stories just like this. For days, Liam was a man haunted by good fortune. The money sat in his account, a glowing, alien presence. He wrestled with it. His pride, a stubborn, sharp-edged thing, told him to send it back. But the pragmatist, the single father who counted pennies and patched his own boots, knew what this meant. He looked at the overdue bills piling on his desk. He looked at the cracked hydraulic lift in Bay 2. He looked at Maya's drawing of the castle, and he made a decision. He didn't go on a spending spree. He paid his suppliers. He bought the new diagnostic machine he'd been putting off. He replaced the bald tires on his truck. He fixed the leaking roof. He invested. The energy in the garage shifted. Customers who had always valued Liam's quiet honesty now also benefited from his new efficiency. The work was faster, the repairs more thorough. The Corso's garage sign, which had been flickering, now burned bright and steady. Then a week later, the black car returned. This time, Alara stepped out. In the harsh light of day, she was a revelation. The trembling, terrified woman from the diner was gone. This Alara was poised, elegant in a tailored blazer, her hair pulled back, her eyes clear and intelligent. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a business magazine. Yet, when she saw Liam wiping his hands on a rag, her expression softened, shedding its corporate armor. "I had to thank you properly," she said, her smile genuine, "and to make sure my driver didn't intimidate you." "He was professional," Liam said, feeling suddenly aware of the grease under his nails. She laughed, a warm, clear sound. "I'm not who you thought I was that night, Liam. I run a small foundation. My father's foundation, really. I've spent the last 5 years trying to help people get back on their feet. But that night, I forgot what it felt like to be the one who needed help. You reminded me." Liam didn't know what to say. He'd never been comfortable around this kind of wealth, this kind of polish. But Alara wasn't there to flaunt it. She was there to connect. She spent an hour at the garage. She didn't shy away from the grime. She listened with genuine interest as he explained the new diagnostic tool. She chatted with Maya, who had come by after school, asking her to explain her castle drawing with the seriousness of an art critic. When she left, she paused by her car door. "Sometimes," she said, her gaze distant, "the people who give the most are the ones who have the least to spare. You gave me safety when you had no reason to. The least I can do is make sure you have security." Weeks turned into a month, then 2. Life in Maple Hollow began to feel brighter. The garage flourished. Liam hired a young apprentice from the local trade school, and one Saturday, with lumber paid for in cash, he and Maya began construction on the treehouse. His neighbors noticed the change. Liam smiled more. The weary lines around his eyes seemed to soften. One rainy Tuesday evening, Alara showed up at the garage just as he was closing. This time she was alone, driving a modest SUV, not the black sedan. This time, she looked like the woman from the diner. Tired. Vulnerable. She was carrying a sadness so heavy it seemed to sink the air around her. He offered her the only thing he had, a seat on a wobbly stool and a cup of lukewarm coffee from the machine. She confessed that despite her wealth, she was struggling. Her late father had left behind a corporate empire built on greed and politics, as she put it. She was trying to pivot the company, to make it about people again, to fund her foundation's work in a meaningful way. But the boardroom was full of wolves. "Everyone wants something," she whispered, her voice breaking, the polished CEO dissolving, leaving a tired, lonely woman. Every handshake, every hello, they all want a piece. Except you. You just helped. You wanted nothing. Hi, for the first time since he'd met her, she cried. Not a few blight tears, but deep, shuddering sobs. Liam just sat with her, a silent, steady presence. He handed her a shop rag, clean but stained, and let her cry. Maya, hearing the voices, came down from the small office where she did her homework. She saw Alara crying, and without a moment's hesitation, she wrapped her small arms around Alara's waist, burying her face in the expensive blazer. A small, innocent hug that said everything Liam couldn't. That hug was the turning point. In the months that followed, Alara became a quiet, constant part of their lives. The visits were no longer formal. She'd show up in jeans and a baseball cap, bringing pizza for Liam and his apprentice. She'd take Maya for ice cream. She'd sit in Liam's office, laptop open, working on foundation proposals while he worked on a transmission. She also started investing in Maple Hollow. Quietly. New uniforms for the high school band, a grant for the town library, a women in crisis fund at the local shelter. Liam didn't realize it at first, but her presence wasn't just healing his bank account. It was healing his heart. For years, he'd buried himself in work and fatherhood, a functional widower who had forgotten how to connect. He had stopped believing that good things, that good people could find him again. Alara wasn't a miracle. She was a reminder. A reminder that when you act from a place of simple, selfless courage, life has a way of sending that light back to you, often from the most unexpected source. One crisp, clear morning, Liam got a text. It was from Alara. Meet me at the Cornerstone, 10 a.m. I have an idea. When he arrived, the diner was quiet. The waitress smiled, pointing him to the back booth, the same booth. Alara was sitting there, 2 mugs of coffee already on the table. The corner of the diner had been quietly reserved. Full circle, Liam said, sliding in. I believe in closing loops, she said, her eyes bright with an excitement he hadn't seen before. Liam, what you did for me, it wasn't just about that night. It was about what you do every day. You fix things. You give people a way to keep moving forward. She pushed a small, bound envelope across the table. It wasn't a check. It was a proposal, a business plan. I want to partner with you, she said. Officially. My foundation wants to launch a new community program. We'll call it the Second Gear Initiative. We'll use your garage as the hub. We'll offer free and subsidized repairs for struggling families, single parents, anyone who needs a car to get to a job they can't afford to lose. We'll give people a second chance to get back in the driver's seat of their own lives. Liam felt a familiar tightening in his chest, but this time it wasn't fear or disbelief, it was purpose. He'd spent so many years just trying to give Maya a stable life, just trying to keep his own head above water. He never imagined that one small act of standing up, of simply being decent, would ripple this far. As they looked out the window, sunlight streaming in, illuminating the same dust motes from that first night, the diner was filled with hope. That night, when he tucked Maya into bed in her room, which was no longer damp from a leaking roof, she asked him a question. Daddy, are we rich now? Like Alara? He smiled, brushing the hair from her face. He thought about the check, the new tools, the flourishing business. Then he thought about the woman in the boardroom, fighting for good, the apprentice in the garage learning a trade, and the proposal for the Second Gear Initiative sitting on his kitchen table. Rich isn't about what's in your wallet, sweetheart, he said, his voice quiet. It's about who's at your table. It's about the work you do with your hands and your heart. He kissed her forehead. In every way that matters, yeah, I think we are. And for the first time in a very, very long time, Liam Corso realized he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was finally truly living. If this story moved you, support Apex Tales by subscribing, share this video, and tell us in the comments, what one small act of courage could you do tomorrow? Because true change doesn't start with $1 million. It starts with one person, in one moment, choosing to stand up. That's the story we tell.